All right, welcome back to another week of the best college football show around. It's College Football Corner with myself, Fletch, and Randy. Randy, how you doing this weekend?
Doing good.
You ready for these titanic struggles we're going to have all weekend long here in these big, huge games? They're going to have so much riding on them.
Well, yeah. Right now, it looks like the biggest game is going to be BYU and who is it? Coastal Carolina.
Coastal Carolina, yeah,
Yeah, they just scheduled that like 2 days ago.
yeah, you got to hand it to BYU. They're going to travel all the way across the country to play that game. You got to hand it to them. At least they're wanting to play, and they might end up playing more games than anybody when it's all said and done. They've got like 9 games already, I think, or something, but they've been playing a lot of games, so that's pretty incredible. I don't know if it's going to do them any good, from a
Yeah.
CFP standpoint. But,
Right.
we can talk about that a little bit. You got UC and BYU on a little list of things there. Real quickly, let me get all this out of the way because I always got to remember to do this. I'm new to this social media stuff. Welcome those of you watching Facebook and YouTube. Obviously, we've got click and subscribe on YouTube with the bells for notifications, and then follow us on Facebook. If anybody's got some issues or whatever, if you can there is a place to chat inside this broadcast, so I can try to monitor that. If you have a question, whatever. I know Randy's wife mentioned something about being able to start a watch party. I know some people we believe are having some issues, maybe trying to find out where they can watch this. I'm looking at the page right now for the Fletch Entertainment Network, and what I don't see, of course, I haven't refreshed anything, but I know my wife's in there, so we'll have to figure all that out. If people are having trouble watching us live, we want to definitely get that rectified. So real quick, last week's premiere episode of What's Up was a pretty big success. I'm getting a lot of good, well received, a lot of good messages on that. I think a lot of it has to do with the big conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter at the end of this month, the big Christmas star. Everybody's looking forward to that. So hopefully we have a great weather on that week. And if you want to know more about that, go find that video or get a hold of me and I'll point you in the right direction. We want to make sure people can see all the things they want to see. Now back to football. BYU and UC, and I got the rankings right here. And it's interesting to me that BYU is 8th in the AP and they're 13th in the CFP. So I'm looking at all the teams in front of them on the CFP. Teams like Indiana with a loss, Oklahoma with 2 losses. Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing BYU play Oklahoma. I wonder how that game would turn out. Iowa State, Georgia with 2 losses, and of course their defense isn't what it has been in the past. So it is interesting that they view Cincinnati so much better than BYU to have them that far apart in the rankings, even after another week where Cincinnati didn't play in BYU. I think did play last week. I don't know that for sure, but they moved up 1 spot ahead of Northwestern, which is interesting. So, I mean, it's all nice and stuff, but I don't see a path for BYU. I see a minimal path, very minimal for Cincinnati, but I think more than anything, we are destined to have 2 teams from either the ACC or the SEC, and maybe both in this Final Four when it's all said and done. And we talked about it a lot. So what are your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, I think so. I think that I think it's a good possibility. Of course, we got a lot to happen in between that. One of the big games. The one thing you're going to see today, and I'm going to predict this early, is you're going to see Texas A&M fall out. They are going to get beat by Auburn. So I'm going to call that. I'm going to call that. I'm going to call
baby
that
on the screen right there.
Yeah,
That's what I'm talking about. I like that prediction.
Throw that up here because I'm calling that one early. That's the upset for the day.
Okay, so, I like it. I'm not going to go against you on that one because I'm not a big A&M fan.
Yeah,
I should be a believer. I mean, I know I don't know. I just don't. Kellen Mond, he's up and down. And obviously, Auburn has been up and down a bit too and stuff. But they're at home, and I was thinking good things about that being a possibility of one of those things where they take care of themselves. But go ahead with that game.
Yeah, I just think that Auburn will win that game. I think Texas A&M has struggled at times. Even last week they started kind of slow. They ended up getting it done, but they've had several games that's been pretty close. And I just think they're going to let Auburn hang around. And Auburn is actually, a pretty good team. Their defense is actually, pretty good. They weren't so good last week, but they're
Wow.
they're normally normally I think that they play pretty well. But yeah, that's just my pick, just a gut feeling there. I think Auburn's going to win that game.
Well, I honestly, I'm not going to say I agree because I'm not calling it like you. You're getting the credit for it, but I won't disagree with you because Auburn's got nothing to lose. The
No,
Iron Bowl's over. They got the doors blown off. A&M has got everything to lose. The minimal chance they have of maybe getting in. Auburn's at home. You can come out there firing all cylinders. Save Gus Malzahn's job for another year. They have been
right.
suspended here, so I think you're right. It's a good trap game, good setup game, and A&M. I think they'll be in a fight if I don't know if Auburn will blow their doors off, but they could. Auburn sometimes gets rolling, and it's all over before you even know what hit you. So that's very possible. But I like that call. That's a good call. So, so you heard it here first.
That's right.
Corner. Those other guys are still talking about what they did when they played 20 years ago. We're talking about today. So, Ohio. Let's go. We'll get into some of these games. Ohio State, Michigan State. It's got the little graphic on that. Every game's a must-win for Ohio State now. They're the only team that's only played 4 games in the all the way down to I think the top 10 for sure. Indiana's played 5 games.
Right.
Maybe 6 actually. So it's ugly. It's an ugly look when you got all these teams in the rankings that have all played 8 games, 9 games, 9 games. There's Ohio State 4. Then you got 7, 8, 8, 6, 8. So and Ohio State. They think I was talking at work. I think they really need to. I mean, I think if they went out, they're going to be in, but it would help them and make the water cooler talk be better if they weren't close games the next 2 weeks. Michigan State, I think, is better than Michigan, but not by much. We watched that game. That was a close game. So they really need to handle and look really good on defense, especially. I don't know if but if they look really good against these two teams, it didn't tell you a whole lot because neither these two teams are throwing the ball all over the place. Which is what's happening to Ohio State. But nevertheless, if they look awful against these teams, it's not going to help them win or lose. It's not going to do them any favors, I should say. But yeah, so from that game standpoint, Michigan State got nothing to lose. It's up on the road. Ohio State, typically has had problems with Michigan State over the years, especially under Mark D'Antonio. New head coach. We'll see what they got to go. I mean, I know you're thinking still 21 points or more on this game.
Oh yeah, I think in the last 2 games for Ohio State's not going to be an issue against either one of the Michigan teams. I know I just don't. Well, one of the things that has popped up with I read this article the other day, and the more I thought about it, I thought it's really true. And they were basically talking about both the teams that we support. They were talking about Ohio State and Alabama, and they were saying really neither one of these teams have. Where'd you go? There you are. Neither one of these teams has faced a top tier quarterback. I mean, a lot of the quarterbacks that they faced, Alabama has faced a little bit better. The guy from Ole Miss is, he's rated a top 20 guy, but of course, Alabama's going to see, a really good quarterback in the SEC championship.
Yeah.
But neither one of those teams so far, have seen a top 10 quarterback. Like they're going to see probably for Ohio State, it would be in the playoffs. For Alabama, it's going to be in the SEC championship. But I was talking to a buddy of mine, and I was like, there is a very good possibility that either one of those teams could see all 3 of the other guys: Trevor Lawrence, Kyle Trask, and excuse me, of course, Mac Jones for Alabama, and then the quarterback for Ohio State. So it's very possible that either one of those teams could see the other 3 guys And the point was, well, they haven't seen a guy like that this year, and
Right.
I think it's more true for Ohio State than it is Alabama, because they have seen some, but like I said, nothing like what lies ahead for them.
No, no, I don't disagree. I think the best quarterback Ohio State's seen was definitely the guy from Indiana. And that guy had some really nice raw talent. He could really zip balls into tight spaces, but the offense was not as explosive as what you're seeing with Alabama, with Notre Dame, even with Clemson, even with Florida and Ohio State. Those offenses, I think, top four, bar none, in college football. I mean, I was thinking about that earlier. Yeah, Bama, Notre Dame, Clemson, Ohio State, all in Florida, all those offenses are clicking. So it's going to be, if anybody if those matchups happen, if they do, it's going to come down to defense, obviously, and then turnovers and all that other stuff, because Ohio State can play offense with anybody. Defense is what's going to tell whether or not they're going to hang with anybody or not. Real quickly, let's do our very first ever, I haven't done this yet, comment from Sherry Cantrell. She says, good morning. You recognize that person next to her, buddy?
I do.
So if you give us a comment, we can put you on the screen with us and you can ask questions and all that. And so it's cool. So that works. So we did that for the first time, but we're getting back to the football. So, but no, I don't disagree. I was looking at myself going, okay, do I want to move Ohio State up this week when we talk about our rankings, because I had them behind Florida and I know Florida's got a loss. And, it's so weird because this year, more than anything, you got the eye test, you got the schedule, you got who they've played. No, hardly any teams have played the same type of schedules, no common opponents. And, I'm not big on the eye test because I don't want them just saying, well, I don't care if they got 2 losses, they're better. I mean, the losses have to account for something.
Right.
You lose. So from a loss standpoint, I can see where Ohio State could be 4th, even though they've only played 4 games. They haven't really beat anybody other than Indiana, and that was a struggle. They were blowing them out early, and then they just let them back in. Same thing with Rutgers. Rutgers was throwing all kinds of kitchen sinks at them, and so that's you think, that won't happen against the big boys. I'm like, they also won't be up that big against the big boys either. So, the jury's still out of whether I'm going to move Ohio State up. I think I might want to see them play this week just to make me feel a little bit better about moving them back up into the 4th spot. And obviously we got some other games between those teams in the top, so that's where I stand on that. So what did you think about the rankings when they came out? I know the top 7 didn't change. It was very uneventful rankings. How did you feel about it?
Yeah, I think so. Well, I think one of the things that plays into those rankings when they vote is, they know that two of those top teams are going to lose because you have Florida and Alabama, and then you have Notre Dame and Clemson. So, given that puts Ohio State in. Like I said, I don't see any issue with them winning out. So, they'll have their 6 games. They'll be undefeated, and 2 of those teams are going to drop. And I just think, you and I have Florida, rated up higher. But, I believe that a lot of people's belief is, well, they're going to have to play Alabama and they're going to lose that game. And so they're 6 or 7 or whatever on the polls, but we don't know that. We think we do, but we don't know that. So I think that all that kind of plays into it. So I just think that maybe sometimes they're thinking, well, this is what it's going to end up being. Maybe not so much what it is today.
Right. Yeah. And I see that, which is why I thought it was curious that they had, Florida behind A&M. I know the head-to-head matters, but I think most people, you and I included, think Florida's a much better team. And Texas A&M isn't as good as it was when that day on the field in A&M. But then again, it's got to account for something, which I'm more believer in that. I mean, if I'm an A&M fan, I'm like, hey, man, we beat them, so we should be ahead of them. And I see the validity of that, And they're A&M's kind of stuck behind Alabama. They just got nowhere to go. They can't get ahead of them. They've already got beat by them, and they got beat pretty good by them, So
right.
the whole Florida Alabama thing is going to be interesting. It's going to be it's going to happen. We know that. Nobody's going to catch Florida either. So looking at that game on paper, it's going to be a great game to watch. I really don't know who's going to win. I feel Alabama's going to win, but we don't know that because they're both really good offenses and they're both, I think, comparable defenses. Neither one of them is just shutting anybody down, but yet at the same time, they're playing really good. So it's at a neutral site. Man, strap them on, and that's going to be a good one. And it's very possible Florida wins that game. And then you've got Florida and Alabama. Can you really say Alabama don't deserve to be in when they've ran the table all year and looked really good doing it, and then they've lost probably a close one? Now, if they get 59-0, like Wisconsin, Ohio State, that's a little different. But, man, that would be – I really don't see either one of those teams blowing the doors off each other. I think that game is a four-quarter game when it comes down here in a few weeks. So,
the one thing that Texas A&M did is, Texas A&M gave the recipe to beat any of those top teams with their high-powered offenses. And you hear it all the time whenever you're watching a game or something. You see the so-called experts. Not near as expert as you and I are.
That's right.
But they're talking about, well, what does this team have to do to win this game? And one of the things they always say, when you're looking at, Ohio State or Clemson or, one of those teams, first thing say, well, they have to control the ball. And that's exactly, we talked about that last week. That's exactly what Texas A&M did to Florida. Yep. They controlled the ball. We talked about, how they kept converting third down. So, we know how to beat those top teams, any of them. Keep them off the field, because none of those, there's good defenses, but none of them are great defenses.
Right.
They're not going to come down and, shut people out. Alabama's defense has played better, but also the teams that they have played have not been the caliber of, what lies ahead. And I think that's true for a lot of the teams. You look at the games today and, Alabama, LSU, maybe because it's Alabama LSU, it might be a little bit closer, but, Alabama's a big favorite. Ohio State's a big favorite. Clemson's a big favorite. Notre Dame's a big favorite. So, the chances of those guys keeping them guys off the field is probably not very good. But when we get down to the nuts and bolts of it, that's going to be the key.
Yeah. I completely agree with that because, like last week, Alabama had no problems with Auburn. It's just because Auburn's offense couldn't, challenge Alabama. So it wasn't so much that Alabama's defense shut the door on them. They did, but it's mainly because they don't have that dynamic of an offense like you're talking, like Ohio State, like Florida, like Notre Dame, even Clemson with Trevor Lawrence, I think is a lot better than with the freshman guy, even though that guy could be still good. He's a freshman. I'm not going to throw the door on him or anything. So when you just can't afford to go 3-and-outs against people like Alabama and Ohio State, Notre Dame. If you do, you're probably going to end up 21-0 in the first quarter, wondering what just happened, because those teams, nobody's defenses are sitting out there stopping these big powered offenses. So it's going to happen if you don't keep them off the field, sustain drives, run the football, third downs, dink and dunk, and eat the clock. You could be in a world of hurt before halftime, So it'll be really fun and interesting to see. Now, obviously, if you're in a shootout, which when these high-powered offenses come together, like the Florida and Alabama in these games, that's where it's going to be really interesting because of who can play defense, who can win a turnover margin, who can do better in special teams and tangibles, barring any injuries and stuff like that, because they both got a lot of them got good offenses. So, absolutely. Go ahead.
That's the other side of the coin. That's the other thing. To me, that's the only other thing that we'll see. Either we'll see somebody that can control the ball, or we're just going to see a shootout. And the chances of a shootout are really good.
Yeah, which is good for television. Guys like us, we like defense too, but a lot of these they just want scoring. Big 12 games. So we're not crazy about that like others are. What do you think about the ACC, what they did with their schedule? I mean, to me, it's a little weird. It's like they changed the way the schedule to protect the integrity of the top three. And by changing that, they took away the Wake Forest game from Notre Dame. And then Notre Dame, by default, is an automatic bid into the championship game because they got the tiebreakers between Clemson and Miami. And they don't have to play Wake Forest. They probably would have beat Wake Forest. I get that.
Right.
But what if they wouldn't have? I mean, it's like, so it's a little weird to me. I kind of see why they did it because of what's about to happen in the Big Ten potentially. If Ohio State didn't play this game, if they don't play next week because Michigan's got COVID like crazy, they're already talking about Barry Alvarez has come out saying all the athletic directors are going to get together because what they don't want to do is have an undefeated Ohio State not get in the CFP. And hey, let's all admit it. It's all about the Benjamins. The Big Ten got a huge payday by Ohio State being in the CFP last year. They want to make sure they get that money.
Ohio State, the Big Ten's not going to leave Ohio State out regardless of what happens. If there's any way possible, they can put those in because, that's really the only, for lack of a better word, that's the only saving grace for the Big Ten and has been for several years.
It's their bell cow,
Yeah, they gotta, it's like Ohio State or nothing for them. So, I could see, if something happened, I could see them, changing the rules or whatever. Which I'm not really sure why some of those came out with those rules. I know they wanted some kind of protocol, you need to do this, you need to do that. But when it comes right down to it, like you said, now we're talking big bucks, and saving the face of the conference. So. They'll change their tune pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I read a little bit of an article that talked about. I don't know if it's more of a speculation, but the reason why they kind of put that in there with the minimum number of games is they didn't want teams winning 3 games and then shutting it down and saying we're in first place.
Right.
I can't imagine anybody would have done that. No. Especially at this level or even the level below us. But I guess so. And I don't know if that was the ADs that did that or Kevin Warren, the new Big Ten commissioner, but he's not really had a great first year at a job. And I was talking to a guy at my work, and we're like, I think Barry Alvarez needs to be the commissioner of the Big Ten because he seems to have his thumb on the pulse of the Big Ten. Mm-hmm. As much as I hated Wisconsin when he was there as a head coach, I respect the heck out of the guy. His teams are great, and he does understand the league, but that's all another conversation. So let's talk about some coaching carousels a little bit. It looks like we could have some serious coaching vacancies. We already have Vanderbilt open. I guess Sirius isn't a good one for that team, but Owen, whatever they were this year, and so he's done. Mm-hmm. And that's where James Franklin came from. He's doing pretty good at Penn State. So they've had some decent coaches there. So, but potentially we're looking at possible Michigan and Harbaugh breaking, Nebraska and Frost, and of course Texas with Tom Herman. I think honestly, I can see none of them teams changing the coaches only because I think Nebraska is all in with Scott Frost. I think the AD likes him. As long as they don't fire the AD, I think he's got a job. Texas, they're 7-3. It's not like they're horrible. They just haven't gotten back to what Texas is supposed to be in most people's eyes. And that he has to shut down the borders. Ohio State's still getting in Texas and taking recruits, so he needs to shut down his borders. He's losing also to A&M and LSU and Alabama. There's so many people coming into Texas getting players. Now, Michigan is interesting. As an Ohio State fan, I want them to keep Jim Harbaugh. I think he's doing great. But
he's doing real good.
But it's a possibility of them firing him, or does he just walk away? They talk about how Harbaugh's kind of quirky. Does he get a little the NFL comes sniffing at him, and he's like, you know what? This ain't working for me. I'm going to go back to the NFL. I kind of feel like he wouldn't do that, but I don't really know because Jim Harbaugh is kind of an odd bird. So do you see any coaching changes in those 3 schools? Do you have a feeling in any of them, or?
Well, it's hard to say because we're talking big time programs, and once again we're talking a lot of money that they got going on there. But I think there are some guys that I think that some of those schools could probably potentially go after, and in some cases maybe they should. Harbaugh, I thought when he came to Michigan, within a couple of years, Michigan and Ohio State are going to be what we knew them to be when we were younger, and we're going to have this great rivalry again. And of course, Texas and Oklahoma and all that kind of kind of not what it once was. So I think there's some people out there that I think that they're going to look at, whether they make a change or not. You have, you know, and in today's world, they go after a coach that's in a successful program. They go after the guys from Alabama. They went after the guys from LSU last year. Uh,
Right.
they go after the guys from Clemson, but somehow Clemson manages to keep those guys. I don't know how in the world they do that, but
Yeah.
I think guys are going to be looking at those. But and then you have the guy from Iowa State, Matt Campbell. Hey, bring Texas or Michigan. I mean,
Yeah.
that would be a big upgrade, and obviously, they can certainly pay him more money.
Oh yeah.
Um, Luke Fickell at Cincinnati, um, that's another one they're probably going to look at. I know his little short tenure at Ohio State, wasn't all that great, but I think he's certainly come a long way since that time.
Yeah.
And then I think the other one, and this name's getting bigger and bigger as the weeks go on, is Steve Sarkisian from Alabama.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
well, he coached the Auburn game, and much like LSU was last year, all of a sudden you have this very potent offense, and this guy came from the NFL. He was with the Atlanta Falcons,
Hmm.
so those are some guys that I think that they're going to look at, whether they can lure them away from where they're at. I think maybe they could possibly go after that, but that's become that's become the norm now. Is, hey, let's find a really successful program. Let's get one of their guys.
Yeah, I completely agree. The one of the outliers in that, from the Texas standpoint, is the rumors that they're going to try to go after Urban Meyer. I don't know if there's any traction to that or not, but apparently the feeling is the boosters and all those for Texas are just going to throw a huge pile of money on the table.
Oh yeah,
And if Urban Meyer wants it, then and Herman's gone. If not, Herman might be there another year or so because they're trying to go for a splash, and I just don't know if Urban Meyer wants to coach anymore. He might, I don't know. That would be a team he could go to that doesn't really conflict. He's not going to another Big Ten team with, going against the Ohio State roots and all that. He's not going against the SEC. So it's interesting. And that would be, if he went down there and resurrected that team and got them, then he just puts another pin on the board of how great of a coach he has been.
well, yeah, it certainly would.
Yeah, much like Saban, for modern coaches and stuff, and even Mac Brown a little bit. If Mac Brown's, he's already turned North Carolina around decently. I really can see a path of Sarkisian, maybe not this year, I don't know, but going to Michigan, because I know he had some issues. He was head coaching out in Washington, got the USC job, had a little bit too much of adult beverage one night, and that kind of killed him.
Yeah.
USC.
Oh, I forgot about that.
You learn from your mistakes,
Yep.
but boy, there's no doubt, in my opinion, his offenses look a lot better than Lane Kiffin's offense. No offense to Lane Kiffin. Sarkisian's looking really, really good. And that's what they kind of need. In Michigan, over the time of Harbaugh's tenure, up until the last couple of years, they've had shutdown defenses, except for when they play Ohio State. That one year they went to overtime. That was a tight game. It's just their offenses have been pretty boring. And then in the last couple of years, they're trying to get their offense to be different. I think one of the guys they got was from Alabama, and I don't think it's him as much as it is when you make a wholesale change like that. It's the players and who you got in there and the talent to actually run the offense stuff. So I can see Sarkisian going to Michigan, huge splash. He's only got to beat Ohio State right now, which is a tall task, but everybody else on this side is really down. It'd be a little better if he went to the West, because the West is anybody's to grab.
Right.
You got to contend with people like Wisconsin, Northwestern, which almost always lose a couple ugly games every year. So, but
And the one thing about those high-powered offenses, kind of you just now touched on a little bit. They got to have the personnel to do it. We see that with LSU now. We've seen that with other programs. The thing is, those top programs have been able to bring in a guy, and it's usually a quarterback, a
Right.
top of the line quarterback, a 5-star quarterback, whatever you want to call it, but a guy that can really get it done. So those programs seem to be able to keep those guys rolling in there, but they got to have the personnel. Alabama's not going to do it, without the one of their strongest point. Their offensive line's awesome.
Yeah.
They probably have the best offensive line in college football. Probably better than some of the NFL teams, but but the point is that's that's without the personnel, like you were saying. Are they able to do that? I know they're great minds. Lane Kiffin has showed some brilliance over time, and even with Ole Miss, and I truly believe if you give him the talent, he's going to put up a lot of points.
Yeah.
So that's just something you got to have, like you were just saying. So, for those guys to go to another program, I think sometimes they should probably go. Let me really think about this. But then, of course, the almighty dollar and probably a little ego comes into play there. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, there's no doubt. It's kind of I think maybe there's some people just don't want to be a head coach. So, because the head coach talks to the boosters, he hosts all these parties. They do a lot more than football stuff, and some of these guys are X's and O's. It's like, hey, I want to run the offense. I want to run the defense. You guys can handle all the politics, and trying to get money into the program and all that. So that's, especially with these big programs, so it'd be interesting. But I honestly think it might be another year before any of those three lose the head coach.
Yeah, probably.
Notwithstanding Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer could be the one thing that could flip to Texas if he's like, let's do it. Other than that, I really think Nebraska's going to hold on to Scott Frost, and I think they should. 3-4 years, give somebody a little bit more time, especially as, no offense, as bad as that program was. He's walking into all kinds of issues, and he's won a few games that are nice, but it's tough, because these top conferences, even the bad teams, they still got great players. These are Big Ten, SEC, ACC players. Even on the bad teams, they're still good players. So they're just not the 4 and 5 stars. So, I think we've covered all the topics and stuff. I guess you wouldn't talk about UC much, but I know we both feel like UC. I think if it's not one of the top 4 teams we've been talking about that are going to end up being in there, if somebody gets in, do you see, where are we at here? If Florida's 2 losses, they're done. If A&M's 2 losses, they're done. That opens the door for UC. If Ohio State loses, because if those other teams lose, that means Alabama beat them. Notre Dame is already there. Clemson won. So Clemson, it's almost impossible. I guess if Notre Dame beats Clemson again, they got 2 losses. Are they done? Does that get Cincinnati in?
Yeah, well, I think they are. And like you said, that scenario is very, very possible. Notre Dame wins. Clemson has 2 losses. Alabama wins. Florida has 2 losses. Of course, then you have OSU. That certainly opens the door for somebody.
Yeah.
The problem is I think one of those games is probably going to be a split, and that's what's really going to be. That's really going to be some talk and some controversy and everything else, because certainly teams are going to get left out. And we even talked about last week a little bit about, 1 plays 2, should they drop to 8?
Right.
We talked about that a little bit last week. So that's UC's only chance. Alabama to win, Notre Dame to win. That's going to knock out 2 of those guys, and then they got to put somebody in there.
Yeah, and then Ohio State, if they run the table, they'll be in, and then UC is sitting right there next. And who else is even back there that can move up? There's nobody. Everybody else has got. Yeah, there's a path, a legitimate path for UC. I don't think there's one for BYU, but UC is basically rooting for no chaos. Alabama take care of Florida. And even if Florida and Clemson lose close games, they're still got 2 losses. So
Right,
I just
right.
don't think they're going to stick. They'll be able to stick around.
And
So,
that's really a nightmare for college football as far as like you were saying earlier, as far as the Benjamins go. We're talking big money because in that scenario, all of a sudden we have the possibility of Alabama, Ohio State, UC, and BYU. Those first two playoff games are not going to pull the money
yeah,
that a Clemson, Notre Dame, um, Florida that they're going to pull in. So I mean that would be that's be a big thing, and I'm nobody's ever going to convince me that they don't look at that.
yeah. There's no doubt. I mean, especially that's what they wrap around the eye test. They always say we want to see the four best teams in. Well, it's four best teams, but it's also the four most deserving. It's a 50-50 of that because you could be a great team, man, but if you lost twice, you lost twice. And like no Clemson could go down as losing twice to Notre Dame and beating everybody else and not get in. And there's merit to that. You just because you've shown you can't beat the second best team in college football, you've played them twice, you've beat everybody else, but still you can't discount other teams winning their games and stuff,
Right.
and losing less games and all that. So, you can't. People can't control who they play in their own conference and how good they work. That's just the way it goes. So
Right. Yeah, that would be that would probably be not a real good matchups for that first round of the playoffs, and maybe something like that would make them say, hey, you know what, we need to extend this thing. We need to get 8 teams in there, which I've always felt that's what they should do anyway. So if they do that, they're going to go, oh, whoa, we look at this top 4. We've got 2 or 3 teams outside of this that a lot of people are going to tell you are better than the number 3 and number 4.
Right. And I agree. We talked at my work about the 8 teams. You get the Power 5 winners in, you get a couple at larges, of the second best in a couple conferences, and a non-Power 5 school, make it out to 8. And then that way everybody's got a good shot. The best non-Power 5's got a shot. A couple of teams that didn't win their conference got a shot, and then all the conference champions has a shot. And I think that looks a lot better on paper. And I know they talk about, well, you don't want to water it down. Man, those games, college football is so big, all those games, all 8 of those, 4 of those games, if you will, all 8 of those games would be completely watched. There's no doubt.
Oh, yeah.
And it still strengthens the regular season. You got to win your conference. If you don't, you got to be one of the best teams that didn't win your conference, or you got to be the best non-power non-5. So absolutely. So that we're all going to be watching Texas A&M and Auburn. We'll see if your prediction comes true.
You heard it here first.
That's right. And everything else hopefully will run its course. And Tuesday night, another CFP, maybe a little bit of a shakeup. Trying to think real quickly if you think anybody's on suicide. My one thought was, I'll throw this up there real quick. Syracuse and Notre Dame. Notre Dame just gets the automatic bid into the championship game, nothing to play for. Do they rest people? Hey, you know what? Let's sit Ian Book. Why waste? Why risk? It's a game you don't have to worry about, right?
Yeah, I don't think so. But yeah, I mean that would certainly be something that they could certainly think about. But no, I don't see that happen. I think that would just work against them if they were to do something like that. And so I don't really see that happening. But I mean, definitely a point. Do they not have that edge? Do they not?
Right. Yeah, I don't think I was playing a little devil's advocate, but they'd be really dumb if they sat Ian Book because they got no losses. You don't want to give yourself a loss and then a second loss and you're out. If they got no losses and lose to Clemson, they're still a heavily favorite for that 4th spot.
Yeah.
So we'll see. So, all right, man, it's been fun. As always, great insight. We appreciate the people tuning in. We got some 5 viewers on the Facebook. Appreciate that. Live viewers, that's great. Got some love from my mother-in-law and got some comments from your wife. Looking good. We'll see if we can take this down to championship weekend and maybe have some gift cards to some establishments for some viewers. If we can get some people in here live, do some questions and stuff. Maybe that'll happen. Maybe not. We'll see what happens. So
yeah, maybe we'll have to do that. First person to come in live and ask us a question.
Yeah, that we can't answer. I was kidding.
Yeah.
Well, you can always answer. It may not be correct, but
there's nothing that we can't answer. I mean, come on.
That's right. All right, man. We'll enjoy it, and I'm sure we'll talk throughout the day. there's always something that happens on Saturday that nobody was expecting. It'll be interesting to see what it is today.
Yep, that's absolutely. My top five hasn't changed, so I don't think there's going to be much changes this week, other than Texas A&M is going to drop.
Yep, I would agree with that. That's about where I got him, and I'm still holding Ohio State out for one. I just want to see him play today. I want to reassure myself, which I'm sure it'll be fine.
Yep.
If they blow the doors off Michigan State, I'm going to be running around the living room yelling "Go Buckeyes! OHIO!" So.
You might as well go ahead and start running now, because that's going to be a blowout.
I don't want to pull something.
I mean, as long as if they come out and they take care of business, keep their foot on the gas, they're not going to have any problem today, I don't think. Now, if they do like they did with a couple other teams, they jump out and then they take their foot off the gas a little bit, lose a little bit of an edge, and all of a sudden the team, a trick play or a couple long balls, which we know they've been right. That's hurt them this year some, but as long as they're out there taking care of business, there's not going to be an issue.
I agree. When I see certain teams like in Alabama, like at Ohio State, the big dogs have a little struggle earlier in the year, it makes me think that's kind of good sometimes, because it opens you up to the fact that you got to make sure you stay on course and fix the problems, and those teams generally later in the year, they're not doing those mistakes anymore. So that's what I want to see from Ohio State. I want to see great pass defense. I want to see a good pass rush. I know it's Michigan State, so it's not like they're going on blue blood. It's still a Big Ten team. You still want to see it happen, because it wasn't happening against Indiana. Their defensive line wasn't quite getting to the quarterback on Indiana. So I want to see them step that up, and I want to see safeties stay back and not bite on garbage pass plays.
And I'll tell you something. The LSU Alabama game, if I was betting, I would take LSU in the points. I don't think, because of what that game is, and they're saying, well, Alabama has the revenge factor, but then LSU sitting there getting slapped in the face, and I think they're saying, hey, we can still play. So I don't think Alabama's in any danger there, but I'm not so sure that it's going to be a 30-point win.
And that is at LSU, right?
That is at LSU.
Yeah. So that I know the home. I think the SEC has got a little bit better with the home advantages, just because they seem like they're letting more people into their stadiums, and they are in a warmer climate. So good for them. I'm all for it.
Yeah, they actually added 150 cardboard cutouts to each game.
Awesome. So. We'll look for that. We'll talk. I'm sure we'll text later, and we'll see everybody here next week, 9:00, for another great edition of College Football Corner, where we break it all down, and so you can go watch it all and see how great we are at what we talk about.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, all right, man. I'll talk to you later, and we will. Everybody, don't forget more things coming up. Go check out the What's Up episode. It's about December. It's all about things you can see in the night sky with naked eye or binoculars, and that really great double planets, what they're calling it, where the Jupiter and Saturn are going to be so close it's going to look like one big bright ball in the southern sky, southwest sky. It's going to happen the week of Christmas. So hopefully wherever you are and you got a good view of the clear sky, no clouds and stuff, at least thin layer clouds at the very worst. So, but that's on the Fletcher Entertainment Network, Facebook, YouTube. Go search for it. Tell your friends, tell your family members, tell your neighbors, tell everybody to tune in to all our shows, and we'll start giving away stuff. That's what we do, right?
That's it.
All right, man. I'm going to close it. I will talk to you next week. All right.
Yep. Have a good day.
Okay. Thanks to you too.